The Lives of the Saints by Father Alban Butler, April 16th, Saint Bernadette of Lourdes. We have already spoken in our February 11th article about the apparitions of Our Lady of Lourdes, whose feast is celebrated throughout the Christian West. Now, on the anniversary of the death of the humble intermediary whom the Blessed Virgin used to transmit her message to the world, we will speak of this chosen soul, whose merits were known to God, but remained hidden from most of her contemporaries. She was born on January 7, 1844, and was the eldest of a family of 6 siblings. Her baptismal name was Maria Bernarda, but everyone called her Bernadette. Her father was a miller. In 1844 he had rented a mill, but the spirit of enterprise and effectiveness were certainly not the characteristic virtues of Francis Soubirous, nor of his wife, Louise Castero. The latter was not yet 20 years old, and was 18 years younger than her husband. Bernadette was in very delicate health and suffered from asthma. Moreover, she had contracted cholera during the epidemic of 1854, which certainly did not favor her normal development. The family had been sinking little by little into poverty. This undoubtedly contributed to the fact that Bernadette's education, even from the religious point of view, was not particularly careful. At the time of the first apparition, February 11, 1858, the family was living in the dark cellar of an old house on the Rue des Petits Fosses. Although Bernadette was already 14 years old, she had not yet made her first communion, and at school she passed for a fool. She was, however, extraordinarily good, obedient, and affectionate with her little brothers and sisters, in spite of her continuous illnesses. The resonance that the apparitions had in the village favored the Soubirous family in a certain sense, because the people were concerned about finding work for Bernadette's father. On the other hand, a very difficult period began for the girl, because the consolation of the apparitions lasted less than 2 months, and from then on she was harassed by the curious and indiscreet, who did not leave her a moment's rest. People wanted to find out what were the 3 secrets that the Virgin Mary had entrusted to her, to give her money, to see her at all hours of the day and night, to receive her blessing for them and their sick, and they even went so far as to tear off pieces of her dress. All this was a strange ordeal for a girl of Bernadette's sensitivity. In fact, at the age of 18, she was already a true martyr. Mother Victoria, to whose care she was entrusted, wrote that Bernadette almost always refused to answer the questions of those who came to see her, for this made her extremely tired. The nervous effort she had to make to answer gave her asthma attacks. When I called her to the hall, I saw her stop in front of the door, her eyes covered with tears. "Come in," I would say to her. "Have courage." Then Bernadette would wipe away her tears, politely greet the visitors, and answer all their questions, without giving the least sign of impatience when they were indiscreet, nor the least sign of irritation when the visitors questioned her truthfulness. A non-Catholic Englishman who visited Bernadette in 1859, a year after the apparitions, left us an interesting account of the impression Bernadette made on those who imagined her to be hysterical or an impostor. This account is taken from a diary and reads as follows: "But first I should have spoken of the little girl. She was a little girl of 14. In reality, she was 15.5 years old, with big, dreamy eyes and very quiet. Her quietness made one think that she was less young and did not fit in with a girl of such a short stature." Bernadette received us with the naturalness of one who is accustomed to dealing with strangers, and begged us to follow her to a room on the upper floor of the shack that stood next to her father's mill. Her brothers, 2 cheerful little ragamuffins, were playing there happily, and our presence did not seem to affect them. The little girl offered us a seat. She stood by the window and answered briefly to all my questions, but without adding any comments. We offered her a trifle as a gift, but she politely refused to accept it and did not allow us to give anything to her little brothers either. In short, she made us understand that, in spite of her poverty, the family would not accept any gift. Our impression was that she was a very pleasant little girl, superior to her age and education, by her manners and her politeness. Whatever judgment is to be given on the apparitions, we are persuaded that Bernadette sincerely believes in them. The Protestant visitors showed much more delicacy than some of the Catholic priests who went to speak with Bernadette. We quote below the writing of a certain priest who spent a day at Lourdes in January 1860. Reading him, one has the impression that he believed that, with his interest in the apparitions, he was doing a great service to Bernadette and to the whole church. The priest brought the girl to his hotel room, even though he had been warned that the wind and the rain could harm her because she had a cold and was in poor health. For almost 2 hours he questioned poor Bernadette about the apparitions, the fountain, and the 3 secrets of the Blessed Virgin. The interview ended as follows, as he himself narrates, "My daughter, you must be tired of my questions by now. Take these 2 gold louis to console you." "No, sir, I need nothing." Bernadette said this dryly, so I understood that I had heard her. I tried, however, to put the money in her hand, but her silence, which was the best expression of her displeasure and indignation, convinced me that I should not insist any longer. I therefore put the money in my purse and continued, "My daughter, will you show me the medals of the Virgin? I have them in the house. They took them from me to impose them on some sick people, and they broke the little chain. Then show me your rosary." Bernadette showed me a very simple rosary with a medal on the end. "Will you allow me to keep this rosary? I will give you exactly what it cost you." "No, sir, I don't want to give my rosary away or sell it. But I would so much like to have a souvenir of you. Think of the long journey I have made to come to see you. Let me keep your rosary." At last the little girl yielded. I caressed that rosary over which the little girl had wept more than once, and which had been the instrument of so many fervent and grateful prayers in the presence of the Virgin Mary. For Bernadette had held that rosary in her hands when the apparition counted the Hail Marys on hers in the grotto of Massabielle. Since then, I have felt myself the owner of a very precious treasure. May I offer you the price of the rosary? Please accept this worthless little coin of no value. "No, sir, I will buy another one with my money." But it didn't end there. The imprudent priest continued, "I'll show you my scapular. Is it like yours?" "No, sir, mine is double." "Show it to me." Bernadette modestly let me see one end of her scapular, as she had told me it had 2 cords. "Praise God, my daughter. I know a very pious soul who would consider herself happy to have your scapular. As you see, it is very easy to divide it into 2 parts. "Yes, but—" "Won't you do me the favor of giving me half of it? You don't lose anything by doing so, for your scapular will be worth the same." "Are you going to give away half of the rosary I have just given you?" "No." "Well, I don't want to give away half of my scapular either." I understood then that I had to give in and leave things as they were. I told her that I was going to give her my blessing, and she knelt down to receive it, with the reverence of an angel. If Bernadette, who was then 16 years old, did not tremble with indignation at the end of that interview, she must have already attained a very high degree of perfection or resignation to accept the kind of trial in which her soul was destined to be purified. From all we know about her, she was an exceptionally sensitive girl. In 1864, after seeking counsel, she asked for admission to the convent of Notre-Dame de Nevers. Illness prevented her from leaving Lourdes as soon as she would have wished, but in 1866 she entered the novitiate at the mother house of the order. She found it hard to leave her family and the grotto. However, she was no less cheerful than the other novices at Nevers, and remained as patient and humble as ever. After 4 months, she became so seriously ill that she had to take her first vows and receive the last sacraments. But she recovered from this illness and was later able to carry out the offices of nurse and sacristan, but she continued to suffer from asthma, and before her death, she had other complications. Saint Bernadette's characteristic virtues were her childlike simplicity, her good judgment as a countrywoman, and her modesty. She considered herself an instrument of the Blessed Virgin. "Our Lady wanted to make use of me. Now they have cornered me. Here I am well, and here I want to die." But in the convent he also had to resort from time to time to some stratagems to avoid publicity. Although she had her heart set on Lourdes, she did not participate in the celebrations that took place on the occasion of the consecration of the basilica in 1876. It seems that she herself decided not to attend, out of modesty, but this undoubtedly cost her dearly, as evidenced by her painful cry, "Oh, si je pouvais voir sans être vu," if only I could see without being seen. It is not a wild guess that one of Bernadette's secrets consisted precisely in never doing anything that would draw attention to herself. Bernadette died on April 16, 1879, at the age of 35. She was canonized in 1933. The official documents of the Church call her Saint Mary Bernadette, but in the hearts of the faithful, she is and will always remain Bernadette.